Hello everyone, I know that I said I wasn't really going to be making political videos anymore, but it doesn't change that I'm still interested in political topics, and I feel like ever since my 16-year-old edgy, hardcore right-wing days, I think I've grown a lot more politically. So I don't feel necessarily as uncomfortable as I would weighing into topics when really I wasn't prepared a lot for a lot of the topics that were being brought up. So does this mean I'll return to political videos full-time? I'm not really sure about that because politics is something, while I'm interested in, it's not something I think I could focus an entire channel around. There's only so much I have to say, and stretching myself too thin would just be a painful experience for all of you. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So this video isn't really a story in the sense, it's more just my critique of the left and right's treatment of black people. If you didn't know, I am black. I am a mixed black person, but that does not change the perception of the general population that I am, in fact, black. However, I do want to emphasize that even though I call out some political sides, not every single person on these sides is guilty of this treatment. And I think that it's more the case of how what's going on with the left and the right is the most extreme people tend to have the loudest voice, and the other side tends to hear the loudest voice. While I think it's good to criticize these people, you should not use this as a rule of thumb for every single person. Listen to other people's ideas, but not necessarily accept them. Before I start getting into my gripes with each individual side, I want to say that each side has a nugget of truth when it comes to this scenario. What me and my friends call the my pet black person syndrome. And it's not necessarily treating black people like pets, it's more just how each side perceives black people. I'm not saying that's the main focus of every side, but being on both sides of the political spectrum, I've seen both sides of it, and both are equally as disgusting. The left and the right are not more or less liable for this. I think it's equally as disgusting, and I think the left gets called out for it more, but the right needs to be held accountable as well. And as someone on the right, I think it's good to criticize the right when they're wrong. So, what is the nugget of truth on both sides? Blacks have been discriminated. This is the left-wing perspective. Black people have been discriminated in the past, and that is a part of our history. You know, there have been laws like Jim Crow and organizations like the KKK in the past who have held power over black people and have prevented black people from doing the things that they truly want to do. And the right is right where things aren't as bad as they used to be. There are no laws or institutes in place. In fact, there are laws in the contrary. In fact, there are a lot of hiring practices that are in place to kind of promote black people in a sense. But while there are nuggets of truth on both sides, I think the left, and especially the right lately, have kind of perverted that narrative. The left more so, but the right is getting there, and that's why I kind of want to make a video about this, so I can share, you know, my piece as someone who is on the right and who is black and who has friends of all different political spectrums who are black. It's kind of something I want to weigh in. Am I the authority on this? Heavens no. Anyone can give their perspective on this kind of issue. I just want to give my personal one. So without further ado, I will start with the left, because I know a lot of my audience is on the right, so it's best to get what you want to hear out of the way before you... But I have a few bullet points, and I have 3 specific bullet points for each topic. So my first bullet point for the left is that the left kind of uses black people for entertainment rather than actually listening to what they have to say. I'm not saying black people are being dressed up in goofy outfits and gesturing around the courtroom. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, while a lot of white people on the left, and black people too, it seems like black people on the left are more used for showboating than actually listening to issues, because there are some black people who have right-wing opinions who are on the left. However, the left is more just, yeah, you can talk as much as you want, but there's not really any listening or any differ from the main narrative unless it goes to a more extreme route. You have to think of stuff like Black Lives Matter. However, what did it actually accomplish? It accomplished a lot of negative, but when you think about the main narrative of the movement, what exactly did it accomplish? Sure, more body cams were put on police officers, but was there any legislation put in place because of that movement? There wasn't. It was a showboat of a movement, and it's a movement that's pretty much died at this point because people stopped caring. And that's what I talk about when I mean the left is rather entertaining these people rather than listening to what they actually said. Because if they listened to what they actually said, they would have pushed for more legislation, like actual political ideas to be put forward, rather than let's listen and let's move on. And this kind of transitions into the arrogance I feel from the left, because the left is very, very arrogant, and it's more importantly the leaders of the left. You know, who is in charge of the left at the moment? I don't think there's a one certain person, but I think that we can point to a few people, you know, like Emma Watson, although apparently she's a white feminist, but there are people you can point to who are arrogant about a lot of issues. And the arrogance of a lot of issues, a lot of people on the left, a lot of white people on the left, mind you, tend to speak over black people because they're the woke ones. They are the ones who know about the issues, so they feel that they can speak over people, even people of color that they claim to protect and that they claim they are standing up for and claiming they're giving a voice to. They speak over these particular people. And it's something I call the mother knows best fallacy. Because you are a part of a certain movement, does that mean you're the expert on that movement? I am on the right. I am not an expert. I am anti-abortion. I am not an expert on abortion. Because you are part of a certain movement and because you assert yourself with a certain label does not mean that you are the benefactor of anything that happens with that movement. And the left is especially arrogant about it. And when it comes to talking over people, they are especially arrogant about it. The left speaks for people who they do not speak for. I don't like it when the left speaks for me. As a black woman, you don't know what I want because you have never asked me. You've asked your friends who are black women, but they do not account for every single black woman on the earth. One person from the ghetto does not account from the ghetto, one person from New York City does not account for New York City, and a few of your black friends, one person does not speak for an entire movement. And it's incredibly, incredibly arrogant that they think this way. The only thing I would say is a tip for the left when it comes to arguing for these things, I want the left to analyze their movement, because the left entertains way too many far-out ideas for the sake of feelings. Feelings are good to keep in account because when it comes to voting, you want to appeal to people's emotions. People are emotional beings, and it's kind of fair for you to assume that kind of position. However, you cannot entertain every single person on the planet because then your movement gets extremely diluted. Find the nuggets of truth in the stuff you argue, because the left is right on some stuff, but they are arguing for it completely wrong. Now, let's get to the right. Am I gonna sit here and say that the right is racist? Absolutely not. Most people on the right are normal people, just like a lot of people on the left are normal people. However, the right does have a track record for entertaining racism, and at least the left is a lot more subtle about their racism. Stuff like the alt-right is completely unacceptable, but more and more nowadays is being entertained by the right, and I get it. Listening to every single idea on the planet is fun and all, but you cannot encompass these people if you want to get to the people you're trying to look after. So my bullet points for the right are also 3. I think the right needs to stop the my black friend fallacy, because when the left brings up this fallacy, they don't particularly explain it well, and I can explain it here. So the thing is about having a black friend, you're less likely to be racist if you have black friends. That is true. However, it depends on how you see that black friend. Is that black friend a companion of yours, or is that black friend simply a means for you to do cool black stuff? It's kind of the same thing where older men are ordering Filipino brides because they're foreign exotic and they don't know a lot about US customs. You can be racist if you have black friends, but the left does not know how to argue that kind of point, so they make a blanket statement and they do not reassess and they do not add to that statement. Another thing I want to talk about on the right is tokens. I am pretty well known for having a beef with Candace Owens. And why? I think she's a scam artist. I honest to God think that Candace Owens is what people call a conservathot, whereas you say what people want to hear rather than your own opinions. I'm not saying someone cannot have a mainstream opinion, but when you make a big showboat about it, something has to be up. And Candace Owens, especially with her past, raises a lot of red flags for me. And the fact that you are not allowed to criticize her by the means of InfoWars raises a huge red flag. She is a token, and I get why the right would want to have tokens. There are not many black people who are ready and willing to accept themselves as right-wing. I get it, in the black community it can be very, very taboo to pronounce yourself as right-wing. However, creating a token only makes it look worse for you, and it especially does not look good for the people you're trying to argue against. The left is vehemently, even though they are guilty of it, they are vehemently against tokenism, but if you turn around and add tokens while proclaiming that you are the anti-racist of the movements, it kind of dilutes your argument just a little bit. And finally, this is more of a personal thing. I'm tired of being told I'm not like other black people, because the truth is, I'm really not. I come from a middle class area where a lot of people here are upper middle class. Here you get a good education, you get a good area. And in terms of the black people around here, I'm not uncommon. It's not uncommon for a lot of black people around here to be into anime, or to straighten their hair, or to be into things that are typically seen as white. But the thing is, we're not different from any other black people. We're a symptom of where we come from. If a black person comes from the ghetto, they're more likely to be ghetto. If a person is from a rural area in the South, they're more likely to be rural. We are similar to everybody else. We are a symptom of where we come from, no matter what race or no matter what we look like. I'm not saying people can't get out of these situations, but I think that the whole fallacy of not like other black people is inherently flawed because it does not recognize why. Why do you think I'm not like other black people? Am I different from the black people you've met? Because I'm not different from the black people I've met. But the nugget of truth is still the same. Treating people differently because you perceive them as different is not okay, especially when there's nothing abnormal about what they're doing. The same could be said about, I'm getting a bit liberal here, the same could be said about gay people. Yeah, a lot of gay people you may have met are flamboyant or fruity, but that's not necessarily true about every gay person. Some people are like that and some people aren't. But immediately trying to make someone feel different or other because they aren't part of your preconceived notion of what that person is inherently uncomfortable. It's really, really uncomfortable to be in that situation. But that's kind of all the criticism that I have for the right. I wanted to keep it to 3 bullet points. If you guys can think of anything else, I will do a part 2 to this video. But my advice for the right is, just because you call out the left for something doesn't mean you cannot be guilty for that thing too. And this is a point a friend of mine actually brought up. Just because you call out the left for being racist or having tokens and stuff like that does not mean the right is not guilty of those things. Less people are willing to call it out because of the side and the right kind of pronouncing themselves as being the better side. And in a lot of ways it is, but you cannot get arrogant about that. Well, in conclusion, I don't think that many people on the right or left are racist, but I think there are tendencies that should be called into question. Like any other movement, each movement is evolving, and every movement wants to be the best movement it can. However, there are some destructive things that can happen when you don't take that into account. So, without further ado, that is the end of my video. If you guys like my content, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!